Well, there's several reasons for that. One is because the person who started Krishna West, Hridayananda Maharaj, is very outspoken about some things. And when he's outspoken, it sort of threatens people's worldview. You know, when he starts speaking about something, he really speaks about it. And he's actually, I would say, our most expert philosopher in the Krishna consciousness movement, as far as being able to explain things. And I don't think I've ever met someone who can philosophically tangle with him and win. So, you know, Prabhupada said he has transcendental intelligence. That's Prabhupada's comment about Hridayananda Maharaj. So, you know, it's kind of intimidating when you're on the opposite side. And in any religious society, you know, apart from Hridayananda Maharaj, you're going to have conservatives and also liberals. I mean, it's like that in any religious society. Like if you look at the Jewish people, they have their ultra-conservatives who dress a certain way with a little whatever, the pious is in the side and little skull caps. And the Amish community. Then you have the Mennonites who are less conservative than the Amish. They're actually from the same background. I mean, any religion is like that. You have your conservative, and then you have your reform. And in politics, it's like that too. And usually the conservatives hate the liberals. The liberals usually love the conservatives, but the conservatives usually hate the liberals. And they just do personal attacks on them. And you see that in the government. I see that in America, for example, that you have this Republican Party, and you have Obama, who is sort of like the head of the liberals, and the Republican Party is always attacking him personally. Especially they're attacking his health care policies. I mean, all he wanted to do was give health care to everybody, which you have here in New Zealand, in practically every other civilized country in the world. But in America, the health care is actually much more expensive than anywhere else, and the life expectancy is not so high in America. Anyway, so you have this disparity between liberal and conservatives. I think that's one reason. And people are afraid. A lot of people have this, what's called hermeneutical, that's a fancy word, hermeneutical understanding of Prabhupada, and that, let's say, everything he said, whether it was, you know, informally or jokingly, is absolutely true. I think that the hermeneutical thing is the main thing, one of the main things too. In other words, like if Prabhupada said, women have 32 ounces of brain substance, it's absolutely true, even though the scientists have measured it and found out that the women have practically as much as the men. So even we find devotees ignoring like reality that's right in front of their face. Because when Prabhupada said something, some things came. Like he said, it came from his teacher at Scottish Churches College, Professor Urquhart, who told him that. But it's not a scientific fact. So sometimes Prabhupada, when Prabhupada is repeating Shastra, that's understood. Prabhupada never deviates from the Siddhanta. But the Guru is not Krishna. The pure devotee is not Krishna. His perfection is in repeating Krishna's words. But let's say if you're driving in a car with him, and he says make a left turn when you know it's supposed to be a right turn, you know, that may happen. It's not that you're going to lose faith in Prabhupada because he says make a left turn instead of a right turn, because he's not Krishna. But he's purely 100% devoted to Krishna. Only Krishna is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. The Guru is a representative of Krishna. Try to understand that. I mean, that's really important point to understand. So you have these, let's say, the ultra-conservatives who say that, you know, everything Prabhupada said, women must definitely have 32 ounces of brain substance. And they ignore the reality that it's not true. And so what do you do about that? You know, and then people read things like that in the Bhagavatam, or read things like that in Prabhupada's statements, and because of that they may lose faith in Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement. You know, people read certain things, and they just think, well, this is not for me, because, you know, the Krishna consciousness appears to be chauvinistic or, you know, racistic or something like that. And people get the wrong impression of Prabhupada. I mean, if you actually look at how Prabhupada dealt with people, he dealt with women and men equally. And actually, at one point, one of the women in the movement asked Prabhupada, says, do I only have 32 ounces of brain substance? And Prabhupada said, no, when one becomes a devotee, the brain grows. So you could take things out of context, and probably, sometimes he's joking, sometimes he's giving instruction according to a particular place and circumstance, and you can almost prove anything. And this allows devotees to fight back and forth about Prabhupada's quotes. And I think that there is some concern on the parts of some conservative people about whether, let's say, Krishna West is following Prabhupada, and specifically Hridayananda Maharaj is following Prabhupada. But in my own interactions with Hridayananda Maharaj, and he's my old dear friend, and of course he's working closely with me and I'm working closely with him, I see someone who's so faithful to Prabhupada, and it's just very inspiring to me. I mean, because as we know, that he was dealt with a little heavily by the GBC recently. I think that's common knowledge by everyone. He was basically told not to travel too many places, except to be in my zone. And, many people would just say, the hell with it. I'm going to just become independent. And many people have done that in the past. But he was very strict in his understanding that our business is to cooperate and follow the GBC. Even if he disagreed with what the GBC did, he said this is Prabhupada's desire. So I find him actually much more conservative in many ways than most of the devotees I know. And people don't appreciate that he's very conservative in his presentation of Krishna consciousness, philosophical presentation, and in his own adherence to Prabhupada's instructions. I mean, I've seen that. I work with Hridayananda Maharaj since 1971. I think longer than anybody in the Hare Krishna movement that's still in the movement. And, closely with him. I was his first brahmachari assistant when he took sannyas in 72. And, I know him quite well. And I do know that he's completely dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. As soon as he found out that Srila Prabhupada gave any instruction, he would follow it immediately. There'd be no question about it. Practically more than anybody else I've ever experienced. And Krishna West has already started. And we have a Krishna West Center in a place called Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is that's right in my zone. And I'm working with him in the whole zone to establish different preaching initiatives based on Krishna West. I have a large part of the southeast United States that's my zone, including the state of Virginia, North Carolina, which is where he's working right now, South Carolina, Mississippi, some different states in that area. And he's setting up his headquarters, probably in a city near Charlotte, North Carolina, anyway, he has a university there that he wants to make it's very central. It's called Davidson University. And so, I'm working with him on a regular basis, and it's already ongoing. And nobody's left any temples. Nobody's left the Krishna conscious movement. And he hasn't taken anybody from a temple or temple service or discouraged anybody in Krishna consciousness. I mean, there's a whole lot of people all over the world who feel inspired by the idea of presenting Krishna consciousness in a culturally acceptable way. That's the whole idea. I mean, it's not such a radical idea. It's just philosophy, chanting, prasadam, and that's it. No yoga. I mean, he says he's too conservative for yoga. Pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, there'll be music with Western instruments, but Prabhupada like that. I was with Prabhupada when he had someone play a bass guitar during kirtan. People now are very conservative about kirtan. There's even a resolution from the GBC about kirtan. But this devotee in the Sunday feast was playing a bass guitar, and Prabhupada was there watching the devotees chant as this devotee was wailing away on the bass guitar. So Prabhupada also encouraged that. I mean, Prabhupada loved Vishnu John Maharaj's music. And Vishnu John Maharaj sometimes played the flute. He did puppet shows. He did, of course, the harmonium. Prabhupada said he chanted like a Gandharva. So the idea is that we don't have to just stick to like an Indian way of doing things to attract people. But we always have to stick to the holy names, the four regulator principles, chanting japa, and prasadam, and all those other nice things. Those are our essential, and of course neck beads, tilak, sika, etc. But Prabhupada said these clothes are not essential. But the proof is in the pudding. When we start to make a lot of devotees, then there'll be a mad rush to copy. It's like Apple Computer. Apple Computer Company, several years ago came out with the first iPad. Everybody was making fun of it. iPad, there was an iPhone, I this, I that, I mean, I, me, and mine. And everybody made fun, but it became so popular, isn't it? That all the companies are imitating iPad and the Apple products, and everyone's suing them. They're suing, Apple is suing the other companies for imitating them, like Apple is suing Samsung company right now for imitating their iPhone and also the iPad. So it's like that, it'll be proven by success. And if it's not successful, whatever. At least we're trying to spread Krishna consciousness. That's the whole idea. When you see how few people are joining in the Western world, you got to try something radical, because we have very little time left. Another point is the Prabhupada disciples, like myself, Sridhar Maharaj, and others. We're old. He's the same age as me. He's about a few months older. And he's like 66, I'm 65. And, how much time do we have left? And what have we done for Prabhupada? What are we going to tell Prabhupada when we leave this world and go to join Prabhupada? What did you do? Well, I made about 10 devotees. Open up one temple. Prabhupada opened up 108 temples in the space of 10 years.